welcome on into All Things AuD. I'm Dr. Natalie Phillips.
I'm Dr. Hannah Galloway.
And we are going to talk about our YouTube channel first.
Yes, so if you go to YouTube and you look up our business name, you will see we now have 75 subscribers. So that's more than last time I announced it. And we have more videos too. So we have 101 videos now. So on a day when we're traveling or we don't have a video, you can come here and find an old one you can watch. So be sure to go find us there and subscribe. And then you'll be able to know when we have some new videos out.
Okay. Let's change. I don't know why our colors are in a different color today.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just changing this. Let me see if I can fix this real quick. All right. So as you know, we do not have Whitney anymore.
Yeah.
So
I just said, I'm Dr. Galloway. And then it's like,
I know. Oh. We're like waiting for the third person. Okay. So we are going to talk, though, about, so we miss her. So, Whitney, if you're tuning in, we miss you. And she is off to grander things here. And we're going to have our new student pretty soon that we're going to introduce you to. So with that, though, I just thought that this is kicking off, since we weren't here last week, Better at Hearing month in the month of May. And Dr. Galloway and I, because we own our practice here, we're a women-owned business. And we thought one of the first things that we're going to talk about is just women and their overall health and also how it relates to hearing. So before that, I thought I'd just kind of introduce where I'm at and some of the things that I've noticed is growing older, like I have to get checked out and be good about. And then maybe Dr. Galloway could talk about it as well. But, obviously not just being a woman, but just getting older. I am into over the 50s year now. And it sounds crazy to say that, but as you notice, back in the day, I would say maybe at least 10 years ago, I probably did this show without glasses, but now I have to have my readers on in order to actually see what's going on the screen. If you make comments so that I can read things. So definitely I have been really good at keeping up with my eyes, making sure that I get everything checked out. I get everything updated. That's just not just being a woman, but just being over 50. So that kind of will tie into what we're talking about as well. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I kind of keep up with, just my doctor's visits and things, just getting older. Again, with everything, my overall health as far as just keeping up with that. And then also just being a woman, just other things that obviously female physicians, OBGYNs, things like that we need to kind of keep up with. Dr. Galloway, what about you? Just either keeping up with your health or being a woman and keeping up with your health as well?
Well, I feel like I'm in that post-kids area. So my kids are 4 and 2.5. And so I feel like you kind of move into like this new, I don't know, area of medicine, right? So we're just kind of like monitoring and everything. Whereas before, maybe I was going like to have, I had a certain injury or something that needs looked at, or like I'm pregnant, so I'm going to get checked up on that. And I did spend a couple years being like, I was so sick of going to the doctor from all of those appointments, 2 kids back to back. I kind of sloughed off a little bit, but I'm back at it and getting all my appointments scheduled and everything. So that's kind of where I'm at. But we're going to talk more about women today. And I think that's funny because we're, as far as menopause and all that, it kind of starts like after you have kids, right? Then it's like everything kind of starts to change. So we're going to talk a little bit more about why that is.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Again, for May, the month of May, it's Better Hearing Month. And as audiologists, a lot of us like to spread awareness about hearing imbalance disorders. And basically what we do as audiologists in that process of helping you either screen or have your evaluations as well as your treatment and care. And so once a year, we kind of spend time really focusing on, I guess all throughout the year, we spend time focused on spreading awareness. But again, we kind of pause with the rest of the audiology world to kind of focus on May, as May is Better Speech and Hearing. And as audiologists, as Hearing Month, right? Better Hearing Month. And so we're going to kind of just spew off some different facts to you all about just learning about overall women and hearing loss. And so the first one I'm going to start off with is the question of whether or not men or women have more hearing loss. And that definitely shows, some of the research shows that men are overall likely to have experience hearing loss more than women. And you can make all the jokes you want about it, but they're typically more, there's more men out there that have hearing loss. But you kind of have to break that down to think about, okay, is it more of because they're more exposed to hearing? Do they work in different environments that have that? Nowadays in our time that we're living, I think that that's not really an issue, because I think that women are still just as exposed, whether it is attending places like concerts or places that they would have loud noise, working, being in different work areas, work environments. I think it's not equal, but it's still getting to be a little bit more where women are in the workforce, where they could be exposed to loud sounds, recreational activities, but also if we look at medical issues as well. So diabetes, heart disease, all of that, all of those types of conditions and disorders and diseases from that can also increase hearing loss in women. And so, even though men are more likely or to experience hearing loss than women, I still think that women are still at risk for hearing loss based on the way that things are going. So I'm going to kind of start with that fact. I'm going to send over the next fact to Dr. Galloway.
Yes. So the next one we're going to talk about is menopause. So it's actually funny because Dr. Phillips is on a panel later, and they sent her like some questions that they were going to ask, and she read this one out loud. Are women more likely to have hearing loss, in the menopause stage of their life? We actually didn't know the answer, so we did some research. And the decline in estrogen levels during menopause has been linked to hearing loss in women, potentially affecting the high frequencies. And so that's also the part of your hearing you're going to lose first from age. To kind of go back to what Dr. Phillips was talking about, I think the reason why we all have it in our heads that men more often have hearing loss than women is because historically, like working on the railroad, working in factories, those were jobs held by men. And at that time, there was no OSHA, or the Occupational Safety and Health. So there was just no rules, and everyone was just being exposed to a lot of levels of noise. And now, of course, we have women in those roles as well. But we also have OSHA, so that, it's sort of the government mandating agency that comes in and says, okay, these people on the bottling line, it's too loud. They have to wear earplugs. You have to follow these sort of rules. So one, we're just more aware. But also, women are in those roles as well. So I think that historically has something to do with it, is the jobs that we were doing, and then that there were no rules around, how loud something can be.
Yeah.
And I was interested to learn about the menopause fact. So pretty much from my age on, the menopause or the estrogen kind of starts to decline. So we can add this to our list of all the other fun things that happen with that process.
Yeah. Another thing we found is it worse for women over 50 and having hearing loss? And so we found some statistics on that, and that in the US, 1/3 of women in their 50s have some degree of hearing loss. And so I can say that I don't, even though I earlier said that that I'm in my 50s. That being said, it doesn't mean that I'm not paying attention as much, right? We're talking about hearing loss. If Dr. Galloway put me in the booth and tested me, I probably would come out with normal hearing. But 1/3 of women over 50 have some degree of hearing loss. And then 2/3 of women in their 60s, so in the next decade, also have some form of hearing loss. So another third are added in just 10 years of age. And so that's something that you want to, if you're in your 50s or if you're in your 60s, we would definitely recommend a hearing test because of those statistics, just so that you can kind of start watching it. Interestingly enough, my last patient before we started the show was a woman over 50, and we kind of sat and talked, and she had a slight hearing loss, and we talked about, where she's at and how she's doing. And I asked her, like, where are you starting to, because we've seen her for 3 years and she's had serial audiograms here. And I asked her, where are you with your mild hearing loss, even if it's a mild hearing loss? And she said, I don't know if it's changed, but I am having a hard time hearing my husband at home and the television. And when we go out to plays or musicals, again, looking at your lifestyle of what you're doing, you might be retired and you might be going out to other places where you're noticing that you're struggling. And even though hearing hasn't changed over maybe 3 years and there's a slight mild hearing loss, you might be noticing other environments that you might have a problem with. And so we talked through some different things about just being able to maybe try something out now, doing a live listening experience with us to try out in her environments, whether or not that's going to be better. And we also talked about the Lancet study and about cognitive decline. And so even after 3 years, hearing hasn't changed much, but she's starting to notice some difficulty. She's going to come back and finally start trying something out to see if it's going to be helpful for her. So again, over 50, even over 60, it's great to have a hearing test done just to see where you're at.
Well, and a lot of just strictly age-related hearing loss doesn't start until, I would say, like 60s. But, there's also reasons why people have hearing loss earlier. So I think between that 50 and 60 age range, people are working. And so they're still having these auditorily demanding environments, but, maybe they do have a little bit of hearing loss. And so they're noticing it more because it's like, well, I used to sit in this boardroom and, hear everybody and I didn't have a problem. But now that I'm closer to retirement, I'm struggling more to kind of keep up in the same way. So I think people are surprised that we fit, most of the patients we fit are like in their 40s and 50s and they're still working and, their jobs are demanding and they need to be able to hear a little bit better. Whereas I think people might think that most of our patients are like 70 plus, which is really not the case. So we see a lot of people in their 50s and 60s. And like with this research, it's showing that, there is a good chunk of people that have hearing loss in their 50s, women and men, but even women. So
yeah. And the conversations too that I had with this woman and other people that come through our office is it's not only about like whether or not you're hearing or not hearing certain things or how you look because somebody's going to have to repeat themselves or whatever it is. But I actually talked to my patients about other things that you don't think about, like the exhaustion at the end of the day, right? Or like the brain lag. So like if you miss out, even if it's a mild hearing loss and you miss out on a sound of the word, whether it's in the beginning or the ending of the word, and it doesn't make sense to you now, whatever you're thinking or following that conversation about, it doesn't make sense. You're like, wait, what? That totally didn't make sense. As you pause to think about it, the dialogue is still going. And so you miss out even more. And so that brain lag makes it a little bit harder. Sometimes makes people more stressed out or exhausted by the end of the day, just by experiencing that. And so think about some of these, I don't know what the word is. It's not really just hearing loss, but other factors that could take place because of the hearing loss that's not being treated as well. So I talk to patients about that because they don't think about that either. They just think about, oh, I missed, or I had somebody have to repeat themselves. But it's other factors that can play into having a hearing loss that can affect you as well.
Well, and if you've ever been in an environment where, like, let's say you go to a lecture or a play or something and you can't hear very well and you're really like listening hard the whole time, like you're putting forth a lot of effort to be able to hear. And you don't realize how tiring that is over a full day. So we get a patient out of the booth and we say, okay, this is, what you have for hearing loss. This is how you did with words. But what I can't measure is how tired are you at the end of the day because you're working this hard just to hear. I oftentimes relate it to, I have worn contacts every day since I was 12 years old. I do take them out. And so I'll put glasses on or whatever at night, but sometimes I'll take them out and I'm like trying to operate in my life without them. And I'm getting really close to things and I'm squinting and I'm trying to like, overcome not being able to see. And I can't see any better, but I'm making myself tired doing it. And so I think that's one good thing to think about is it's not necessarily like someone said something and you totally didn't hear them, but maybe you just missed the high frequencies of it, and putting those back makes it easier for your brain to understand, makes your overall listening effort less. So you just don't have to put as much effort towards it. The other example I have is if you've ever been like in the car and you're maybe listening to something on the radio and someone had the window cracked and then they close it and you're like, oh, I didn't realize how much that was exhausting me or like wearing me down. I was really trying to listen so hard to the radio over that noise, but you're just doing it, not realizing maybe you've been in the car for an hour and then you roll the window up and you're like, oh, that's so much easier for me.
Yeah,
so I think
that's a great example. I like that one.
That's a good way to relate it, because it's like you're so focused. Natalie and I, when we have patients in the booth, we sit outside the booth, we have our headset on. And so sometimes we're listening to them repeat words over noise. And that's when I find myself really noticing it, is that when I turn the noise off, I'm like, oh, that makes my life so much easier to just hear them. And kind of comparable to people putting forth a lot of listening effort, just to get by or hear what they had always heard.
Yeah.
So.
And then our last thing that we did was we kind of looked up just different facts on women and hearing loss. And this was taken from the Better Hearing Institute. And I just saw a typo here. And honestly, like some of the stuff here, we've probably already talked about, but we're just going to kind of go over it anyway, just because I think it's good information to pass on. But number one, women with hearing loss are more likely to be depressed. And so research is showing that hearing loss is associated with depression among US adults, but particularly among women. And so I just kind of wanted to dive deeper into this one because, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, if you compare women to men and you look at women who have friends, that they go out with, they spend time with. Men, they don't, sometimes they do, right? They might make a boys trip or a men's trip or whatever, right? Things like that. But I feel like women thrive on that connection. And so when they don't hear well, and it either withdraws them from the conversation when they're out, or they decide, I just don't want to have to put up with it, right? Or I just feel bad making people have to repeat themselves. Then they don't say yes to whether or not it's going out and meeting up with their friends. And so a lot of that time, I think because women thrive on connection, that I can see that this can be true, where they'll be more likely to be depressed, right? And so that's something that's super important. Again, if you're listening to this and you've got a family member or a loved one, and you're kind of seeing that withdrawal, or you're kind of seeing that they're missing out on certain things, encourage them to get their hearing tested, right? Because I think that getting them back to their lives and connected to their loved ones is going to be a lot more helpful. And maybe we can reduce this depression because of the fact of, I look at it as missing out on the connection piece.
Well, and actually, I just told Natalie this yesterday. I had a patient who got a cochlear implant, and I had seen him a few times before he got the cochlear implant. He gets the cochlear implant. I'm following up with him. And it's like he just came alive a little bit more. It's like he just woke up. He's more lively. He's more engaged. He's, got more stories to tell. He's going to contribute more. And so I think we get to see that part of it, of how much it can really just kind of put a smile on someone's face to be able to participate more. And yeah, the opposite of that is feeling a little bit more isolated, withdrawn, lonely, all of those things. So it's always encouraging to see that, especially when someone has, had they've worn hearing aids. It's not enough. They've gone and they've gotten this surgery, even though they're, maybe in their 80s or something. And then to see them kind of just wake up a little bit because they hear better. It's like, wow, that did a lot.
Yeah. And that was a male patient too. So again, some of these things apply to both, right?
Right. I could see what you're saying about women being a little bit more communal, socially. And I think historically, women were more like in groups, right? Tending to like their communities. So I do think that makes sense. The next one, I know we've talked about this before, is that the ear may be a window to the heart. So cardiovascular and hearing health are linked. And some experts say that the inner ear is so sensitive to blood flow that it's possible that abnormalities in the cardiovascular system could be noted here earlier than in less sensitive parts of the body. And I know we talked about Frank's sign on a different show. That's like a little crease in your earlobe. I'm pretty sure that's mostly related to men. And my friend that taught me about that works at the VA. So she sees a lot of male patients, but that's the same thing. It's sort of related to cardiovascular health and hearing loss. So, as you're aging, put audiology on your list of, even if you're not having problems, because we might be able to sense something that you weren't aware of, or find, be able to monitor something that we weren't really even worried about because we were checking for it.
Yeah. Yep. Our next fact that we pulled is that if you have diabetes, you're about twice as likely to have hearing loss. And so I think a lot of our world is kind of heading towards just kind of watching overall your heart health, like Dr. Galloway had talked about. But then also, because we live in the US, I just feel like unhealthy eating is very, very common. And so we wanted to bring this point up too, because that's huge. I mean, you're doubling your risk to have hearing loss if you've got diabetes. What's more is that having diabetes may cause women to experience a greater degree of hearing loss as they age, especially if diabetes is not well controlled. So again, 11% of women in the United States are affected by diabetes. So we're recommending not only, coming in to have a hearing test, but also making sure that you keep up with your other appointments, right? Your regular appointments with your doctor, having things tested out, making sure that you are on top of things health-wise. And so just to make sure that nothing has changed over time. As we get older, it gets a little bit harder. Your body doesn't keep up as much. And so making sure that you're keeping track of that.
Yep. And so kind of along what she was talking about, lifestyle behaviors. So yes, living in the United States, I feel like we have some poorer lifestyles than in some of the rest of the world as far as what we eat and exercising and all of that. We definitely have a lot of diabetes is very prevalent in this country. So many of the same lifestyle behaviors that affect your heart also impact your hearing. So the interconnectedness between cardiovascular and hearing health is found in 3 studies with modifiable behaviors. So one found that a higher level of physical activity is associated with lower risk of hearing loss, which makes sense. You're being healthy, and also the blood supply. So when you go on a walk, your blood is pumping, you're getting that to like the very extremes of your body. And so that's a really good thing. Another revealed that smokers and passive smokers are more likely to suffer hearing loss. Also makes sense. I know that can affect, your blood supply, and having poor circulation is certainly not going to help with hearing. And a third found that regular fish consumption and higher intake of omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids are associated with the lower risk of hearing loss in women. So again, those are like, taking fish oil, things that are going to take care of your body, but will also take care of your ears. The Lancet study that we love to talk about, that's the big takeaway from that study was at middle age. So at the age of most of our patients, the 3 things that you can do moving forward to help, protect yourself are your age your ears. So get your hearing tested and wear your hearing aids, get your eyes checked regularly and make sure your glasses are, up to date. And then also your cardiovascular health. So getting exercise, eating decently, being aware of, super processed foods and all of those things.
Yeah. I'm sitting here going, yep, that's me. Check, check, check,
Yep.
check, check. Making sure everything's kind of checked off here. Okay. So this one is kind of interesting. We had found that hearing loss in women is tied to common pain relievers like ibuprofen and acetaminophen, which would be Tylenol, right? And they are associated with increased risk of hearing loss in women. And the link is even stronger among those younger than 50. So I thought we'd point that out. And a lot of the times I think a lot of these types of things, I mean, I can only think of like females in sports, right? Because that's one of the things that you might go to is, I saw this trend and I don't know if it's true, but I just remember, because my kids are in sports, but just hearing people in this habit of taking pain meds like this before you go and practice even. It's not even like a game or something like that, but these athletes are kind of getting used to that. And I don't want to just jumble them all together and group them together because it's not all athletes. I'm just saying that I do remember a few years back, that was the thing to do, was you take something before you go work out, or you go practice, or you go do whatever, almost like a preventative thing. And I thought that was so strange. But this makes sense that if there are more younger people starting to do this, then you need to start paying attention to your hearing as well. If that's the case, if that's where the trend is going. And we say if, because we're not really too sure if that really is the trend, but that this is a fact that the Better Hearing Institute put out too, that it is hearing loss in women is tied to most common pain relievers as well. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. And I think that maybe younger people too, just, you think it's just Tylenol or ibuprofen, it's harmless, but you don't think about the cumulative effects of if you're taking it 3 days a week, for your whole lifetime. The other thing that I was thinking about too is cramps and period pain, especially for like women athletes, right? So it's not like you're not playing that week or you're not having a game or something. So you may be more likely to take it for that too. But I think overall younger people just don't maybe consider how the cumulative effect of that. And I think with drinking too, like, alcohol and Tylenol or ibuprofen are really dangerous, but people might underestimate it because, it's just for a headache, it's not a controlled substance or something. Okay, what's the next one that we have? Addressing hearing loss may benefit cognitive function. So this is that Lancet study that we love to talk about. So research shows a link between hearing loss and dementia, which leads experts to believe that interventions like hearing aids could potentially delay or prevent dementia. And in that study, they had one cohort that over 3 years' time, they had 48% less cognitive decline because they were wearing hearing aids. The group that did not wear hearing aids didn't have that decrease. So that's really cool to see on paper. And I think doing bigger studies will find the same thing, is that it kind of keeps you with it a little bit, right? Because you're just more engaged and aware of what's happening. So
yeah. So again, just kind of different facts that we have found preparing for this show, and then also an interview that I've got right after in this afternoon. But kind of just focusing on Better Hearing Month. We will not be here. I was going to say we will be, but we will not be here next week because I am actually going to be here on my own. I know Dr. Galloway will be traveling. And then the following week, hopefully, we'll see, but we might introduce you at that point to our new audiology resident who will be here for the next year with us. So that's exciting. So if there's anything else that you guys want us to focus on or talk about, let us know. Spread the word, share this out, especially during this month, because May is focused on better hearing. And we just want to continue to raise awareness about what we do as audiologists to help you take care of your hearing health. So with that, we will see you in a couple weeks. All right.
Yeah.
Later.